Everyone needs a buddy, including our plants. And while we diligently space our crops to maximize their yields, such as our garlic, our strawberries, our beets, our peppers, our kale, perhaps there's a better way. Personally, from my experience, there is, and it's called companion planting. It's nothing new though. Interspecies planting of crops has been around forever, and when you think about it, much longer than even agriculture itself, as nature practices it every season. As home gardeners, we've got a ton of options. So today, let's look at how to interplant different crops together, why we should do it, and all the benefits that come along with companion planting. Companion planting in its simplest form is the practice of growing two or more species of plants together for mutual benefit. The benefits are wide and many, which we'll get into in just a sec, but I found that the modern definition of companion planting has changed a little bit. It feels as though it's considered companion planting when the garden benefits as a whole, rather than the individual plants directly. Basically, as long as the plants involved don't hinder each other's growth, people consider that companion planting. I don't necessarily agree or disagree, I just wanted to make that distinction for you guys. So for the purpose of this video today, I'm going to treat companion planting as interspecies planting in close proximity where neither plants are negatively affected. Of course, there's still benefits as a whole, which we'll get into, but for now, let's dive into what companion planting actually looks like. Companion planting can take many forms. Crops can be direct seeded together, and transplants can be simultaneously sown in at the same stage of life. In addition to that, like in this case here, one plant can be delayed and then worked in well after the other is established. It seems confusing, but really, there's only a few rules to follow to be successful. Before a companion plant can complement its bedmate, it first must not directly compete with it. Two plants aggressively vying for the same nutrients or access to the sun aren't companions. They're competitors. Now, all plants are going to compete to a degree, even these garlic plants here. But there's really only 17 essential elements for plant growth, so there's bound to be some overlap. But pairing up something like corn with another nitrogen hog crop, like say squash, would not be advisable. And same with your sun-loving plants. Trying to grow garlic or onions in the shade of a huge brassica crop just isn't going to work. But there are times when it can work, and this is where you start to see the nuances of companion planting. Planting a little tomato amongst giant pea plants and some overbearing carrots may not be the best idea, even though they're all considered friendly plants. However, planting a tomato plant that's just a bit larger, able to grab its own sun rays, and grow alongside them as an equal is perfectly fine. So it's not just a hardcore, super defined list of what plants can and can't grow together. Timing and well thought out spacing play a huge part in companion planting. Take this bed behind me here. Exploding radishes out the front against a backdrop of rising pea plants. Eventually, those peas are going to reach 7 feet tall or more, completely shading out the sun-loving radishes. But this particular bed is situated running north-south. So while the peas may shade out the morning eastern sun, the radishes will still enjoy the entire rest of the day from noon onward in full basking mode. On top of that, they have different rooting depths, grabbing different amounts of water from different places in the soil profile and also requiring different nutrients. And if that wasn't enough, the radishes keep the soil shaded, which the peas just love. Companion planting is all about stacking those win-win situations. Okay, before we pull out that big list of what plants you can and can't grow together, let's take a closer look at the real tangible benefits of companion planting. Right away, the first benefits we see of companion planting are tangible and logistical. It saves us a ton of space. By interplanting crops with different physical heights and spreads, we can fit more plants in, just like nature does. While some find beauty in the uniform aesthetics of a single crop, give me the density and complexity of nature any day. Back to the garden, even like plants at the same stage can be planted together as well. Take this bed here. I'm planting magenta chard alongside coastal star romaine lettuce. The chard is going to grow at least 3 feet tall, while the romaine is going to stay compact, closer to the earth. Observing the minimum spacing rules, I'm maximizing the space that would otherwise be left empty, or at best, be a monoculture row of the same plant. And by using up that available space, we keep the soil covered, eliminating erosion from severe rainfall and drying out from excessive heat. Not only that, it'll keep the weeds at bay. Again, we're looking for those win-win-win situations. Because when you think about it, once all these plants grow up and they fill in those spaces, fill in those gaps, they're going to act like a mulch. Which, speaking of, you may notice some of my tomatoes here are lacking mulch. Anyone that knows me knows that this almost never happens in my garden. But this is by design. What I've done with these pots here, and I really wish they would have sprouted in time for this video, is I've gone ahead and sown a cover crop of basil right into the top layer of soil. It just needs a couple more warm days, and that basil is going to be up, filling out the top of that pot nicely. It's going to act as a living mulch for that tomato plant, and in turn, the tomato is going to break up that intense summer sun for the lush, tender basil leaves. Win-win. The biggie with companion planting, however, is pest control, and it works in multiple ways. With a single crop, same type garden, pests can run rampant, attacking the entire crop as one big group. A diverse, heterogeneous garden, however, is far less attractive to pests looking for an easy meal. And it goes even further than that. Some crops will actually act as deterrents or attractants for pests, keeping their companion buddies free and clear of unwanted guests. On the one hand, crops like garlic and onions repel many forms of insect pests, acting as bodyguards for the rest of your crops. While a sprinkling of nasturtiums will take one for the team, being far more attractive to harmful insects. This is also known as trap cropping. 3 different levels of pest control, all from companion planting. Another benefit is providing a smorgasbord for pollinators, both in variety and in longevity. By using a mix of annuals, perennials, and even biennials, your garden will be in a constant state of bloom, giving you a sense of awe for the majority of the year. In my opinion, it all comes down to diversity. A diverse interplanted garden is far more productive than a single crop one. Just like people. Think of a city where everyone was only good at one thing, one occupation. Very quickly, that city would cease to function. Without a diverse collection of roles and responsibilities, a city couldn't support itself, as the shortcomings would eventually be too great. Same as our gardens, each crop working in unison as a collective for the greater good. As you can see, the benefits of companion planting cast a wide net and can vary in their degrees of helpfulness. But once you get a taste of all different kinds of plants working as a collective together, pushing your garden to new heights, it'll be hard to go back to the old ways. Okay, hopefully by now we're all sold on the idea of companion planting and the benefits it can bring. So how do we get started? Well, honestly, just like we did with our tomato plants here, we can get started right away. Companion plantings can be direct from seed, like we did with our basil, or they can be from plugs and established plants, either simultaneously or delayed, like we did with our kale and red lettuce. I've got a great little green onion plant here that's decided to grow along the side of the pot. You know what goes great with green onions? Tomatoes. The trick with planting in an already established pot is to not disturb the first plant too much. Although this is a pretty small pot, green onions have stunningly shallow root systems. They'll be more than okay with the tomato plant taking up the whole volume of the pot. And the tomato plant will happily oblige, as we all know how vigorous those are. Just like that, with very little effort, a perfect companion planting. Grouping two complementary plants in a pot like this, or thinking back to that basil that we seeded with our tomato plants, those are some of the easiest ways to get started with companion planting. And if your garden is young with plenty of empty spaces, think of it as a blank slate, which makes it much simpler to get started. But remember, like we said before, we want to keep the competition limited. Limit your pairings of plants that want the same nutrients, have the same growth patterns, and the same rooting depths. And don't forget about those pests. If a plant is susceptible to a particular blight, disease, or insect, avoid grouping it with other plants with the same afflictions. Even further to that, some plants are bullies, and they can actually inhibit the growth of other plants that are too close. Fennel is a great example of this. Avoid companion planting that guy. Okay, that's a lot of do's, don'ts, and maybes. And on the surface, it may seem complicated. I get that. But once you get started with companion planting, once you do your first few groupings, it becomes much simpler. And speaking of those groupings, if what you need is a master list of what can and should be planted together, I've compiled a companion planting chart right here. And hey, if there's any plants not on the list here that you're curious about companion planting with, leave a comment down below. I'll make sure to research it and try and find out for you. Companion planting is a bit of a next step in backyard gardening. If this is your first garden, or if you're just now starting to see success with a few crops, don't feel like it's something you have to do. As you get more comfortable with more crops and more seasons under your belt, do give companion planting a try though. It really can level up your gardening game, and the benefits far outweigh any deficiencies that you might see, even if you just employ a trial and error system. Either way, happy growing guys, and I'll see you soon. Hey, thanks so much for watching guys. I appreciate the support more than you know. And if you're getting value from these videos, please like and share them to spread the word and help your fellow gardener to grow better.